Jake Morrison knelt beside the crystalline stream, pressing his scanner against the dark soil. The device beeped softly as it analyzed the mineral content. Around him, the jungle of Kareth 7 stretched in every direction, its violet canopy filtering the light from the twin suns overhead. He had been on this planet for 3 weeks now, and the beauty of it still took his breath away. The survey mission was going well. His team had cataloged over 200 species of plants and animals, and so far, nothing had tried to eat them. That was always a good sign. Jake stood up and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The gravity here was twice that of Earth, and even simple tasks left him tired. His radio crackled. "Jake, you getting anything interesting out there?" It was Ben Carter, the security officer. "Just standard readings," Jake replied. "Nothing unusual. I'll head back in about 20 minutes. "Copy that. Stay alert." Jake moved along the stream bank, taking more samples. The jungle was alive with sounds. Strange birds called from the trees. Insects buzzed past his head. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly, even in daylight. He was about to turn back when he heard something different. A weak, mewling sound came from somewhere nearby. Jake stopped and listened. There it was again. A soft cry, almost like a whimper. It sounded young, whatever it was. He followed the sound to a fallen log, covered in thick moss. The crying was coming from underneath. Carefully, Jake knelt down and peered into the shadows. 2 large eyes stared back at him. They were unlike any eyes he had seen before, with 3 pupils in each one. The creature let out another weak cry. "Hey there, little one," Jake said softly. "What are you doing under there?" He pulled out his flashlight and shone it into the space. The creature flinched but didn't run. It was about the size of a house cat, with 6 legs and fur that seemed to shift colors in the light. Right now it looked silver, but as Jake watched, patches of blue appeared and faded. The creature was painfully thin. Jake could see its ribs pressing against its skin. Its breathing was shallow and rapid. This was an animal in trouble. "Jake, what's your status?" Ben's voice came through the radio. Jake pressed the transmit button. "I found something. A small native creature. It looks like it's starving." There was a pause. "Jake, you know the protocol. We don't interfere with native wildlife." "I know. But Ben, this thing is dying." Another voice joined the conversation. It was Lisa Graham, the botanist. "It might be sick, Jake. Its pack could have left it behind for a reason. Could be disease." Jake studied the creature. It was watching him with those strange triple-pupiled eyes. He didn't see fear in them now. Just desperation. Just hunger. "I don't think it's sick," Jake said. "I think it's just lost and hungry." "Jake, don't do anything stupid," Ben warned. But Jake was already reaching for his pack. He couldn't just walk away. He pulled out an emergency ration pack and tore it open. The protein gel inside was designed for human consumption, but it was better than nothing. He squeezed a small amount onto his fingers and held it out toward the creature. It sniffed the air, its small nostrils flaring. Then, very slowly, it crawled forward. The creature's movements were weak and shaky. When it reached Jake's hand, it paused. Then its tongue, surprisingly long and rough, licked the gel from his fingers. The creature's eyes widened. It made a soft chirping sound and pressed closer, licking up every bit. Jake smiled. "There you go. That's better, isn't it?" He offered more gel, and the creature ate eagerly. Its sharp teeth were careful around Jake's fingers, as if it understood not to hurt him. When the gel was gone, Jake pulled out his water canteen. "You need water too, don't you?" He poured a small amount into his palm. The creature lapped it up gratefully, making soft chittering sounds between drinks. As it drank, Jake noticed something. The creature's fur was brightening. The silver was shifting to gold in places, especially around its face. Jake pulled out his medical scanner and carefully passed it over the creature. The readings confirmed what he suspected: severe dehydration and malnutrition, but otherwise healthy. No signs of disease or infection. This wasn't a sick animal. This was a young one that had gotten separated from its family. The creature finished drinking and sat back. It looked at Jake with what seemed like gratitude. Then it made a series of clicking and chirping sounds, tilting its head as if trying to talk to him. "I wish I could understand you," Jake said. He looked around at the surrounding jungle. That's when he noticed the claw marks on the nearby trees. They were deep gouges in the bark, high up on the trunks, much higher than this small creature could reach. Whatever made those marks was big, very big. Jake's smile faded. He stood up slowly, looking at the tracks on the ground. 3-toed prints, each one the size of a dinner plate. Fresh tracks. His heart began to beat faster. "Ben," he said into his radio, trying to keep his voice steady. "Can you run a thermal scan of my area?" "Already on it. We've been monitoring." "Jake, you need to listen to me very carefully. We're picking up a large heat signature moving toward your position. And when I say large, I mean massive." "How fast is it moving?" "Fast. You've got maybe 2 minutes." Jake looked down at the small creature. It had perked up, its fur now bright gold and standing on end. It was making high-pitched calling sounds, over and over. Understanding hit Jake like a cold wave. This creature wasn't abandoned. It wasn't lost by accident. It had wandered away, and now its parent was coming to find it. He took a step back from the creature, but it was too late. The jungle around him suddenly went quiet. The birds stopped singing. The insects stopped buzzing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then he heard it. Trees splintering. Something massive crashing through the undergrowth. Coming fast. Coming straight for him. The small creature's calls grew more excited. It was bouncing on its 6 legs, looking toward the sound. Jake's hand moved to the pistol on his belt, but he knew it would be useless. Whatever was coming, it was big enough to knock over trees. A pistol wouldn't stop it. The crashing grew louder. Closer. Jake could feel the vibrations through his boots now. The ground was shaking with each step of whatever was approaching. He had about 30 seconds to decide what to do. Run, and probably get hunted down. Stand and fight with inadequate weapons. Or stay very, very still, and hope that feeding its child would count for something. The trees at the edge of the clearing began to shake. Jake could see the branches swaying as something enormous pushed through them. He made his choice. He stood perfectly still, hands away from his weapons, and waited to see if his kindness would be enough to save his life. The creature that burst into the clearing was beyond anything Jake could have imagined. The mother was massive. She stood at least 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Her body built like a tiger from Earth, but scaled up to nightmare proportions. 6 powerful legs supported her weight, each one ending in claws that dug deep grooves in the soil. Her fur was a display of warning colors, deep reds and blacks with electric blue stripes running down her sides. As she entered the clearing, her fur seemed to pulse with color, the blues becoming brighter, more intense, but it was her eyes that froze Jake in place. She had 4 of them. 2 faced forward like a predator, giving her depth perception to track prey. 2 more sat on the sides of her head, watching everything around her. All 4 eyes were locked on Jake. The tigress opened her mouth and roared. The sound was so loud that Jake felt it in his chest. His teeth rattled. The ground beneath his feet vibrated. Birds exploded from the trees, fleeing in all directions. Jake's radio exploded with voices. "Jake! Get out of there!" Ben was shouting. "We're coming with weapons!" "No," Jake managed to say, though his throat was tight with fear. "Stay back. If you shoot at her, she'll kill me for sure." The small cub ran past Jake's legs, chirping excitedly. It bounded toward its mother on unsteady legs. The massive tigress immediately shifted her body, placing herself between Jake and her offspring. She lowered her head, her lips pulling back to reveal 3 rows of serrated teeth. Jake kept his hands visible, away from his body. His pistol might as well have been a toy against this creature. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he knew that would trigger her hunting response. He had seen enough Earth predators to know that running meant death. "Easy," Jake said, his voice shaking only slightly. "I didn't hurt your baby. I fed her. See? She's okay." The tigress circled him slowly, her movements fluid despite her size. Her tail, thick and powerful, lashed back and forth. Jake turned slowly, keeping her in sight, never making sudden movements. His training had covered first contact scenarios, but nothing like this. The cub was making sounds at its mother, a series of chirps and clicks. The mother responded with low growls, never taking her eyes off Jake. It almost looked like they were having a conversation. That's when Jake noticed something important. The mother tigress was thin too. Not as bad as the cub had been, but he could see the outline of her ribs beneath the fur. Her flanks were hollow. This wasn't just a protective parent. This was a desperate one. His mind raced through the data his team had collected. 3 days ago, they had recorded significant seismic activity in this region. Underground shifts, probably from tectonic movement, large enough to alter the landscape. If this was the tigress's hunting territory, the earthquake could have disrupted everything. The prey animals would have fled to safer ground. The mother couldn't leave her cub alone to hunt in distant territory. The cub was too young, too vulnerable. So she had tried to hunt nearby, but there was nothing left to catch. The cub had wandered off while she was gone, gotten lost, become too weak to find its way back. Jake looked at the empty ration wrapper on the ground. The cub was nuzzling it, trying to find more food. The mother saw this too. Her eyes followed the wrapper, then moved to Jake's pack. "You're hungry too," Jake said softly. "Both of you are starving." The tigress growled again. But it was different this time. Less aggressive, more uncertain. She was torn between her instinct to protect her cub and her own desperate hunger. Jake made a decision that his team would probably call insane. He reached very slowly for his pack. The tigress tensed immediately, her body coiling like a spring ready to attack. "It's okay," Jake said, keeping his movements smooth and deliberate. "I'm just getting food. Food. For you." He pulled out another ration pack, then another. He had perhaps 6 of them total, meant to last him 2 days in the field. He held one up so the tigress could see it. Her nostrils flared. She could smell the food. Jake tossed the packet onto the ground between them, then took a large step backward. The tigress's eyes followed the packet, then shifted back to him. She was suspicious, clearly wondering if this was some kind of trick. The cub solved the problem. It broke free from behind its mother and pounced on the ration pack. The small creature tore at the wrapper with its teeth, getting the packet open and eating the gel inside. The mother watched her cub eat. Her 4 eyes kept flicking between the cub and Jake, calculating, assessing. Then, slowly, she moved toward the food. She sniffed at it carefully, her nose nearly touching the packet. Her long tongue, striped blue and black, licked the gel cautiously. Jake held his breath. The tigress began to eat. Not frantically like the cub, but steadily, her eyes never leaving Jake. He took the opportunity to back away more, giving her space. He pulled out the rest of his rations and placed them on the ground, then moved back again. As the mother ate, something remarkable happened. Her fur began to change color. The angry reds and blacks faded. The electric blue softened to a calmer shade. Green tones appeared, mixing with gold. She was still massive and powerful, but she no longer looked like she was about to attack. Jake's scientific mind cataloged the observation. The color changes weren't just camouflage. They were emotional indicators, like a mood ring. Red meant anger or threat. Blue meant alertness. Green and gold meant calm, content. He filed this information away, knowing it could save lives later. The cub finished its food and waddled over to its mother, curling up against her massive leg. The mother made a soft, rumbling sound, almost like a purr, and bent down to groom the cub with her tongue. "Jake, what's happening?" Lisa's voice was quiet in his ear, afraid to disturb the moment. "Your vitals are stabilizing." "She's eating," Jake whispered. She was hungry. They both were, The tigress finished the last of the rations. She sat back on her haunches, a position that made her look almost like a house cat. If house cats were the size of vehicles, she studied Jake with clear intelligence in her eyes. Jake could see her thinking. This creature was not just an animal. There was something more there. A consciousness. An awareness that went beyond instinct. She was making decisions, weighing options, understanding consequences. The mother made a series of complex sounds, deep rumbles mixed with clicks, and something that almost sounded like words. The cub responded with its own chirps. They were communicating. Jake was certain of it. Then the tigress did something that stunned him. She stood up, gently picked up her cub by the scruff of its neck, and began to back away toward the jungle. But after a few steps, she paused. She set the cub down and looked back at Jake. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the clearing. Jake felt something pass between them. Not quite understanding, but acknowledgement. Recognition. She knew he had helped her cub when he could have run. She knew he had fed her when he could have called for weapons. The tigress made one more sound. It was low and soft. Almost gentle. Not a growl. Not a threat. Something else entirely. Then she picked up her cub again and disappeared into the jungle, moving as silently as something that massive could move. Jake stood alone in the clearing, his legs suddenly weak. He sat down hard on the ground, his hands shaking from the adrenaline flooding his system. "Jake," Ben's voice was urgent. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Jake said, though his voice was unsteady. "She's gone. They're both gone. What the hell just happened?" Chris Holland, the pilot, asked. Jake looked at the empty ration wrappers scattered around the clearing. "I think," he said slowly, "I just made first contact." The walk back to base camp felt longer than usual. Jake's legs were heavy. And not just from the planet's gravity. Every shadow in the jungle made him jump. Every sound set his nerves on edge. But nothing attacked him. Nothing even came close. When he finally emerged into the clearing where they had set up their habitats, the entire team was waiting. Ben had his rifle ready, scanning the tree line. Lisa was pacing nervously. Chris stood by the transport ship, ready to fire up the engines if they needed to evacuate. Danny Walsh, their mission commander, stood with his arms crossed, looking less than pleased. "Conference room, now." Danny's voice was flat and cold. The conference room was just a section of the main habitat with a table and chairs, but it felt like a courtroom as Jake sat down. The others filed in, and Danny closed the door. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Danny didn't sit down. He loomed over the table, his face red. "You violated every first contact protocol we have. You interfered with native wildlife. You could have been killed." "The cub was dying," Jake said quietly. "That's not your decision to make." Danny slammed his hand on the table. "We're here to observe, not to play ranger. What if that creature had attacked? What if you had died? We'd have to report a fatality, explain why one of our people got himself killed feeding alien animals. But he didn't die." Lisa spoke up. "And Danny, you should see the data. The behavior Jake described, the color changes, the communication between the mother and cub. These aren't simple animals. They're predators," Ben added, though his tone was more thoughtful than angry. "Dangerous ones. But I watched the whole thing through Jake's body cam. That mother made a choice. She chose not to attack when she easily could have. That's significant." Danny sat down, rubbing his temples. "What's done is done. We report this to the Galactic Council's Colonization Committee exactly as it happened. Let them decide if it affects our approval for settlement." "And until then?" Jake asked. "Until then, you stay away from those creatures. All of you. Is that clear?" Everyone nodded, though Jake felt a knot in his stomach. Something told him the tigress wouldn't stay away, whether he wanted her to or not. He was right. That night, Jake was trying to sleep when the perimeter alarms went off. He pulled on his clothes and rushed outside to find the whole team gathered around the security monitors. There, Ben pointed at one of the screens. A heat signature, large and unmistakable, was circling the camp perimeter. It never got close enough to trigger the inner alarms. But it was there, moving through the trees like a ghost. "It's her," Jake said. "The mother." "Why is she here?" Danny demanded. "Is she hunting us?" Jake watched the heat signature complete another circuit of the camp. "No. If she wanted to attack, she would have by now. She's just watching." "Watching what?" "Us. Maybe making sure we're not a threat. Or maybe—" Jake trailed off. An idea forming. "Maybe what?" Lisa asked. "Maybe she's protecting us," Ben snorted. "Protecting us from what?" "From other predators. This is her territory. She knows her cub is safe. Because of us. Maybe she's returning the favor." The heat signature made one more pass, then disappeared into the jungle. The alarms went silent. Everyone stood in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the alien night. "Get some sleep," Danny finally said. "We'll deal with this in the morning." But the morning brought something unexpected. Jake was the first one up. And when he stepped outside his habitat, he froze. There, just beyond the perimeter markers, was a dead animal. Ben came out next, weapon immediately raised. "What is that?" Jake approached carefully. The creature was about the size of a deer, with 4 legs and blue fur. Its throat had been cleanly severed by something with very large, very sharp teeth. There were no other wounds. It hadn't been eaten. It had simply been killed and left there. "This doesn't make sense," Ben said, lowering his weapon. "Predators don't kill and just leave their food." But Jake understood. He knelt next to the carcass, examining it. "She left this for us. It's a gift. You can't be serious. Look at the placement. It's right at our camp entrance, positioned so we couldn't miss it. No drag marks leading away. This wasn't a kill site. This was delivered." Lisa joined them, her scanner already out. "The kill is fresh. Maybe 3 hours old. Jake, if you're right, this means she hunted for us." "She's reciprocating," Jake said softly. "I fed her and her cub. Now she's feeding us." Danny was the last to arrive at the scene. He stared at the dead animal for a long moment. This is getting complicated. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. Every 3 days, the Tigress would leave a kill at the camp perimeter. She never got closer than necessary. She never showed herself during daylight. But the gifts kept coming. Jake started leaving out portions of their ration supplies at the forest edge. Not much. Just enough to show the gesture was mutual. Every time he left food, it was gone by morning. Sometimes, he would find strange markings in the soil nearby, patterns that looked almost like symbols. Katie Price, their linguist, became fascinated. She set up recording equipment at the forest edge and managed to capture the sounds the Tigress and her cub made when they came to collect the food. She spent hours analyzing the recordings, running them through the ship's computer. "This is incredible," Katie said one evening, gathering the team to show her findings. "Listen to this." Coming, she played a recording. The Tigress's vocalizations filled the room. A complex mix of growls, clicks, and rumbles. "Now watch what happens when I run this through a linguistic analysis program." Katie typed rapidly. The computer detects patterns. Repeated sound combinations that correlate with specific actions or situations. This isn't random animal noise. This is structured communication. Language? Lisa leaned forward, studying the data. Possibly. The cub's sounds are simpler, like a child learning to speak. The mother's are more complex. And look at this. Katie pulled up another screen. I captured them interacting with each other. The mother makes a sound. The cub responds with a specific pattern. The mother corrects with a different sound. That's teaching behavior. Abba, we're not dealing with animals, Jake said. We're dealing with people. Danny was quiet, staring at the data. If you're right, if they're truly sapient, then this changes everything. We're not just observing wildlife. We're in the middle of a first contact situation, which means we need to do this properly," Ben added. "By the book. The book says we report to the council and wait for instructions," Danny said. "But that could take weeks. In the meantime, what do we do?" Jake had an idea. "Let me try to make closer contact. Let her see that I'm not a threat. Build on what we've already started." "See? Absolutely not," Danny said immediately. "Danny, we're already in contact. The gift exchange proves that. I'm just suggesting we make it official. Let me show her that we want to communicate." Lisa backed him up. "He has a point. If they're sapient, they have rights under galactic law. We can't colonize this planet without their consent. We need to know what we're dealing with." Danny considered this for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But you don't go alone, and you wear full protective gear." "No," Jake said. "Protective gear makes me look like a threat. I go in regular clothes, with food. And I stay in the open, where she can see I'm not hiding anything. That's suicide. That's trust." 2 days later, Jake sat at the forest edge as the suns began to set. He had a pack full of rations beside him and nothing else. No weapons, no armor. Just a man sitting in the grass. Waiting. He didn't have to wait long. The Tigress emerged from the trees just as the first sun dipped below the horizon. The cub was with her. Much healthier now, bouncing with energy. The cub saw Jake and immediately ran toward him, chittering excitedly. The mother followed more slowly, her fur displaying cautious blue and green colors. Jake stayed seated, non-threatening. The cub reached him and immediately started sniffing his pack, knowing food was inside. Jake laughed and pulled out a ration pack, opening it for the cub. The mother sat down about 3 meters away, watching. Her eyes moved from Jake to her cub and back again. Jake could see her making calculations, assessing the situation. Slowly, deliberately, Jake pulled out another ration pack. He held it up so the mother could see it, then placed it on the ground between them. He scooted backward, giving her space to approach if she wanted. The cub, full of youthful curiosity and no fear, grabbed the ration pack and dragged it toward her mother. The massive tigress bent down and sniffed the offering. Then, with her eyes still on Jake, she began to eat. As she ate, Jake started talking. His voice was soft, conversational. "I know you can't understand my words, but maybe you can understand my tone. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to know you're okay, that your baby is okay." The tigress paused in her eating, her head tilted slightly, as if she was listening not just to the sounds, but to the meaning behind them. Jake continued. "This is your world. We're just visitors. If you don't want us here, we'll leave. But I think maybe we could help each other. You kept us safe from other predators. We can share our food when hunting is bad. That seems fair, doesn't it?" The cub, bored with eating, bounded over to Jake. Before he could react, it climbed into his lap, curling up like an oversized cat. Its fur was warm and soft, and Jake could feel a faint vibration, like a purr. The mother tensed, her body coiling. But Jake stayed very still, one hand gently resting on the cub. He looked at the mother, trying to convey peace, safety, trust. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the mother relaxed. She finished her food and moved closer, not threatening, just closing the distance. She sat down right next to Jake, so close he could have reached out and touched her. Her fur glowed warm gold in the fading light. At the camp, the team watched through long-range cameras, holding their breath. "Unbelievable," Katie whispered. "He's sitting between them, like family." And in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't human and animal. This was two intelligent species, meeting as equals, finding common ground in the simple act of sharing a meal. The peaceful routine lasted exactly 11 days. Then everything changed. Jake was in the middle of his morning check, when the long-range sensors detected an approaching ship. Danny rushed to the communications array, and his face went pale as he read the incoming transmission. "It's the Galactic Council," he announced to the assembled team. "Ambassador Vrel is coming for final inspection. They'll be here in 2 hours." 2 hours? Lisa's voice rose in pitch. "We haven't finished our reports. The habitat survey isn't complete. And what about the situation with the Tigress?" Danny's jaw tightened. "That's exactly the problem. If Vrel finds out we've been conducting unauthorized first contact, he could deny our colonization request, or worse, report us for protocol violations." Jake felt his stomach drop. "We can't hide what happened. The evidence is everywhere." "We don't have to hide it," Danny said. "We just need to downplay it. Present it as incidental wildlife observation, not active contact." "That's lying," Jake protested. "That's survival," Danny shot back. "This colony approval means everything to humanity. We need new worlds, Jake. Overpopulation back home is critical. If we lose Kareth 7, thousands of families lose their chance at a better life. You want that on your conscience?" The words hit hard. Jake knew Danny was right about the stakes, even if he hated the approach. "During Vrel's inspection, we maintain minimum contact with all native life," Danny continued. "That means no more visits to the forest edge. No more food drops. The Tigress and her cubs stay away from camp. Everyone understand?" The team nodded reluctantly. Jake said nothing. Ambassador Vrel's ship landed with typical Kryn efficiency, exactly on schedule. The ambassador himself was tall and thin, his gray skin marked with the blue ceremonial tattoos of his rank. His eyes, all 3 of them, missed nothing as they swept across the human camp. "Commander Walsh," Vrel's voice was dry and precise. "I trust you are prepared for inspection." "Completely, Ambassador. We've compiled all survey data for your review." Over the next 3 days, Vrel examined everything. He questioned each team member about their findings. He analyzed their environmental impact studies. He reviewed every specimen collected and every scan taken. His face remained neutral throughout, giving no indication of his conclusions. Jake found the forced separation from the Tigress harder than he expected. On the first evening without him at the forest edge, he heard distant calls from the jungle. The Tigress was looking for him. He wanted desperately to respond, but Danny had stationed Ben at the edge of camp to ensure no one broke protocol. The second night, the calls grew more distressed. The cubs' higher-pitched cries mixed with the mother's deeper vocalizations. They didn't understand why Jake had stopped coming. Katie pulled Jake aside after dinner. "I've been monitoring their calls," she said quietly. "The pattern has changed. They sound worried." "What can I do?" "Danny's right about the stakes." "I know. I just thought you should know they're asking for you." On the 3rd day of inspection, Lisa returned from a botanical survey in Grid Section 7. She burst into the command habitat. Her face flushed from running. "Danny, we have a situation. I found the Tigress's den." Everyone stopped what they were doing. Ambassador Vrel looked up from his datapad. "Explain," Danny said, his voice tight. "It's a cave system behind the western waterfall. The cub is inside. But something's wrong. It's making distress calls, and it's not moving right. I think it's injured." Jake was on his feet before he realized it. "We have to help." "Absolutely not," Danny said. "We stay here. We let nature take its course." "Danny, that cub could die. That's not our problem. It is if I made it trust humans and then abandoned it when it needed help." Jake's voice was rising. "That makes it our responsibility." Ambassador Vrel's 3 eyes fixed on Jake. "What exactly is your relationship with this native creature?" The room went silent. Danny's face was a mask of forced calm. "We've had some incidental observations of the local predator species. Nothing more. The specimen calls to you specifically." Vrel addressed Jake directly. Jake met the ambassador's gaze. He thought about lying, about protecting the mission, about all the families back home who needed this colony. But when he opened his mouth, Only the truth came out. Yes, sir. I helped the cub when it was starving. I've been in regular contact with it and its mother for almost 2 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. I see, Vrel said slowly. Commander Walsh, is this true? Danny looked like he wanted to disappear. The situation is more nuanced than it sounds. I do not require nuance. I require facts. Vrel stood to his full height. You have engaged in unauthorized first contact. You have violated observation protocols. This is a serious breach of galactic law. Ambassador, please understand, Danny started. I understand perfectly. Humans, once again, cannot maintain professional objectivity. You allow emotional responses to override judgment. Vrel began collecting his datapads. I will be recommending denial of colonization rights for Kareth 7. Furthermore, I will be filing a formal protest about human expansion policies. Sir, with respect, you're making a decision without all the information. Lisa interjected. I have sufficient information, Vrel replied coldly. That's when Jake made his choice. I'm going to help that cub. With or without permission. File whatever report you want. But I won't let it suffer. Because of politics. Jake, don't, Danny warned. But Jake was already moving toward the door. Ben stepped into his path, conflicted loyalty showing on his face. Let him go, Lisa said. Ben, let him go. Ben hesitated, then stepped aside. Jake grabbed a medical kit and headed toward the western waterfall. Behind him, he heard arguing voices. But he didn't stop. The cub needed help, and that was all that mattered. The cave behind the waterfall was exactly where Lisa described. Jake had to crawl through a narrow entrance. His medical kit slung across his back. Inside, the space opened into a larger chamber, dimly lit by bioluminescent fungus growing on the walls. The cub lay in a nest of soft plant material. When it saw Jake, it tried to stand but collapsed with a pained cry. Its left foreleg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and the skin around it was swollen and inflamed. It's okay, little one, Jake said softly, approaching slowly. Let me help. The cub whimpered but didn't try to move away. Jake carefully examined the injury. The leg was broken, probably from a fall, and infection was setting in. Without treatment, the cub could lose the leg, or worse. Jake opened his medical kit and began working. He had studied the Tigress's biology extensively over the past weeks. The antibiotic gel he carried should work on their biochemistry. He cleaned the wound carefully, applied the gel, and fashioned a splint from materials in his kit. The cub's breathing eased as the medicine took effect. Jake pulled out his water supply and mixed in electrolyte powder, helping the cub drink. As he worked, he talked quietly, keeping his voice soothing. He was so focused on the cub that he didn't hear the mother return until she was right behind him. Jake froze. He was in her den, handling her injured offspring, cornered with no escape route. If she decided he was a threat, he was dead. The massive tigress moved past him, her body filling the small space. She bent down to sniff her cub, checking the bandaged leg. The cub made soft chirping sounds, and the mother responded with gentle rumbles. Then she turned those 4 eyes on Jake. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Jake stayed very still, barely breathing. He could see her thinking, deciding. Finally, she made a low sound deep in her throat, not aggressive, almost questioning. I couldn't leave her to suffer, Jake said quietly. She trusted me. I had to come. The tigress sat down, blocking the cave entrance. Jake's heart sank. She wasn't going to let him leave. But then he realized she wasn't guarding against him leaving. She was guarding against anyone else coming in. She was protecting him while he cared for her cub. Jake continued his work, aware of the mother's eyes on him the entire time. When he finished, the cub was resting comfortably, its breathing steady and even. Jake sat back, exhausted both physically and emotionally. The tigress made a series of soft sounds, then gently nudged Jake with her massive head. It was almost affectionate, like a cat asking for attention. You're welcome, Jake said, reaching up to touch her muzzle. They stayed like that for a while, human and alien, sharing a moment of understanding that transcended language. Outside the cave, Jake could hear voices approaching. The search party had found him. He could hear Ambassador Vrel's sharp tones demanding entry. Jake looked at the Tigress. They're going to want to move you away from us. Separate us. But I won't let that happen without a fight. The mother stood, and Jake expected her to flee deeper into the cave system. Instead, she picked up her cub gently in her mouth and moved toward the entrance. "What are you doing?" Jake asked, following her. The Tigress emerged from the cave with Jake right behind her. The search party froze. Danny, Ben, Lisa, Katie, and Ambassador Vrel all stared as the massive predator walked calmly past them, carrying her cub. Then the Tigress did something that stunned everyone. She walked directly to where Vrel stood, set her cub down gently at the ambassador's feet, and sat down facing him. She was presenting her injured offspring to the stranger, showing him what Jake had done, making a statement that even the ambassador couldn't ignore. Ambassador Vrel stared down at the cub, sitting at his feet. The small creature looked up at him with those strange triple-pupilled eyes, its splinted leg held carefully off the ground. The mother tigress sat tall and proud, her fur displaying calm blue and green tones, waiting for the ambassador's reaction. "Extraordinary," Vrel breathed. He looked at Jake. "This creature understands what I represent. She knows I am the decision-maker. She's intelligent," Jake said. "They both are. That's what I've been trying to tell you." Danny stepped forward carefully, avoiding sudden movements near the tigress. "Ambassador, perhaps we should continue this discussion at base camp. We can set up a subspace link to the full council." Vrel nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off the tigress. Yes. I believe the full council needs to see this." The walk back to camp was surreal. The massive tigress followed them, her cub walking slowly beside her on 3 good legs and 1 splinted one. She stayed close to Jake, occasionally nudging him gently with her shoulder. The team formed a loose protective circle around them, though it was unclear who was protecting whom. Back at the command habitat, Danny set up the emergency subspace communication array. It took nearly 20 minutes to establish a connection to the Galactic Council chambers. When the screen finally flickered to life, it showed a semicircle of seats occupied by representatives from a dozen different species. Jake recognized a few of them. The Kryn delegation, wearing their formal blue tattoos. The insectoid Zarathi, whose compound eyes made them impossible to read. The aquatic Delphinians in their water-filled environmental suits. And in the center seat, the ancient Tauren, whose species had founded the Galactic Council 4,000 years ago. Ambassador Vrel, Tauren's voice was deep and resonant, carrying the weight of countless years. "Your emergency summons was most unusual. What is so urgent it could not wait for standard channels?" Vrel stood before the camera, his 3 eyes serious. "Honored council members, I have encountered a situation that requires immediate judgment. The human survey team on Kareth 7 has engaged in unauthorized first contact with a native species." Murmurs rippled through the council. One of the Kryn representatives leaned forward. "First contact protocols exist for good reason, Ambassador. Surely the humans understand this. If I may." Jake stepped into view of the camera. "We do understand the protocols. But sometimes the right thing to do isn't found in a manual." "And who are you?" Tauren asked. "Jake Morrison, xenobiologist." "Sir, I'm the one who made contact. I don't deny it. But I'd like you to understand why before you make your decision." "The why is irrelevant," another council member interjected. "Rules exist to prevent harm." "Please," Jake said, "just let me show you what happened." Danny pulled up the recordings from Jake's body camera. The council watched in silence as the footage played. Jake finding the starving cub. His decision to feed it despite warnings. The mother's terrifying arrival. The tense standoff that should have ended in blood but instead ended in understanding. The recordings continued through the following days. The gift exchanges. The growing trust. Katie's analysis of the vocalizations. And finally, Jake. treating the injured cub, while the mother stood guard. When the footage ended, the council chamber was quiet. The creatures show clear signs of intelligence, Torin observed. Communication structure, gift-giving behavior, strategic thinking. These are markers of sapience, but they are not technological. The Zrathi representative buzzed. They do not build, do not create tools. How can they be considered sapient by council standards? Jake took a breath. With respect, sir. Intelligence takes many forms. We've only been studying them for a few weeks, but in that time, we've seen complex social behavior, teaching behavior, and problem solving. Just because they don't build spaceships doesn't mean they don't think and feel. The human makes a valid point. One of the Delphinans said. Our own species lived in ocean harmony for millennia before developing technology. Sapience and tool use are not the same thing. Ben stepped forward, carrying a datapad. If I may add to this, I reviewed all our security footage from the past 3 weeks. The mother Tigress has been actively guiding us away from dangerous areas. She's warned us about unstable ground. She's led us around toxic plant clusters. This isn't random animal behavior. She's been protecting us. Lisa joined in. And I found these in her den. She held up her scanner, displaying images of plants. These are medicinal herbs. She's been mixing them with the food she leaves for us. Plants that counteract local toxins that human biology can't process naturally. She understood we were vulnerable and helped us. Katie added her findings. I've been analyzing their vocal patterns for weeks. The computer has identified over 300 distinct sound combinations that correlate with specific meanings. That's language. It's not like our language, but it's structured communication with grammar and syntax. The council members conferred quietly among themselves. Jake watched Ambassador Vrel, trying to read his expression. The Kryn ambassador's face was thoughtful. No longer the stern mask of judgment. Then something unexpected happened. The camp's proximity alarms sounded. Everyone turned to look at the monitors. Multiple heat signatures were approaching from the jungle. Large ones. What is that? Vrel demanded. Jake felt his pulse quicken. On the screen, he could see at least 6 massive shapes moving toward the camp. More tigresses, all of them converging on the human settlement. Defensive positions, Ben ordered, reaching for weapons. No, Jake grabbed Ben's arm. Look at the colors. On the thermal imaging, the approaching creatures were displaying blue and green signatures, not the red of aggression. And leading them was Jake's Tigress, the mother he had helped, walking calmly toward the camp with her cub. She's bringing her pack, Jake realized. She's introducing us. This is unprecedented, Torin said from the screen. They are initiating formal contact. The tigresses emerged from the jungle in a loose group. There were 7 adults and 4 cubs of various ages. They moved with purpose but not aggression, their fur displaying calm colors. The mother Jake knew walked at the front, and she came straight to where the camera was positioned, where she could be seen by the council. She sat down facing the camera, and the other tigresses formed a semicircle behind her. It looked almost ceremonial. Then she began to vocalize, not the simple sounds Jake had heard before, but something more complex, a long, elaborate series of clicks, growls, and rumbles that lasted nearly a minute. Katie's computer was frantically analyzing the sounds. It's too complex for full translation yet, but the basic structure. She's addressing them. The council. She knows they're watching. What is she saying? Danny asked. The pattern suggests formal greeting. And something else. The word combinations here. They keep repeating. I think she's stating her name, her identity, and her pack's identity. Katie's hands were shaking as she worked. She's introducing herself. Like a diplomat. Torin leaned forward on the screen, his ancient eyes wide. In 4,000 years of council history, I have never seen anything like this. A pre-technological species making formal diplomatic contact. The mother tigress's cub limped forward on its splinted leg. It moved to where Jake stood and sat down at his feet, just as it had done with Ambassador Vrel earlier. The message was clear. This human helped. This human can be trusted. One of the other tigresses, older and heavily scarred, moved forward next. She carried something in her mouth. When she set it down, Jake saw it was a small, intricately woven mat made from plant fibers. The weaving was complex, deliberate, artistic. "They do create," Lisa whispered. "They're showing us they create." The old tigress made a series of sounds, and Katie's computer translated the basic meaning. "We make. We think. We know." The Galactic Council chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives were talking over each other, gesturing, debating. Finally, Torin raised his hand for silence. "This council has a decision to make," he said. "But first, I wish to hear from the Kryn delegation. Ambassador Vrel, you were prepared to deny humanity's colonization request. What say you now?" Vrel was quiet for a long moment, his three eyes moving between the screen and the tigresses assembled in the camp. "I came here believing humans were reckless," he finally said. "That their emotions made them unsuitable for expansion into new territories. I was prepared to prove that human judgment could not be trusted." He paused, then continued. "But what I have witnessed here is not recklessness. It is not poor judgment. When that human, Jake Morrison, chose to feed a starving cub, he saw beyond species. When he risked his life to treat the cub's injury, he demonstrated courage and compassion. And when these magnificent creatures responded with trust and cooperation, they proved that intelligence and dignity are not limited to those who build spaceships." Vrel turned to face Jake directly. "Every other species in this council reached the stars through conquest or calculation. Humans are different. You reach out not with weapons or mathematics, but with open hands and open hearts. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs." Jake felt tears prickling his eyes but held them back. Torin addressed the full council. "All in favor of granting humanity colonization rights for Kareth 7, with the provision that it be designated a joint species world, raise your appendage." Every member of the council raised their hand, claw, or tentacle. "Furthermore," Torin continued, "I move that the tigress species of Kareth 7 be granted full recognition as a sapient species under galactic law, with all rights and protections therein." All in favor? Again, unanimous approval. "Then it is decided." Torin smiled, an expression that transformed his ancient face. "Welcome to the galactic community, friends from Kareth 7. And humanity, you have shown us all that there are many paths to the stars. Your path of compassion is one we would do well to remember." The transmission ended, and for a moment, everyone in the camp just stood in stunned silence. Then Lisa let out a whoop of joy, and suddenly everyone was talking at once, laughing, celebrating. Jake felt a nudge at his side. The mother tigress was looking at him, her fur glowing warm gold. He reached out and placed his hand on her head, and she leaned into the touch. "We did it," he said softly. "We actually did it." 3 months later, the human settlement had grown into a thriving community. But it looked different from typical human colonies. The habitats were built with input from the tigress families, respecting their traditional territories and migration patterns. Shared spaces had been designed where both species could gather. Jake stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and orange. The cub, now a gangly adolescent but still affectionate, bounded up to him and nearly knocked him over. Her leg had healed perfectly, leaving only a small scar. Her mother approached more sedately, followed by 3 tiny cubs from her new litter. The cubs tumbled over each other, playing in the grass. One of them spotted Jake and came over to investigate, sniffing his boots curiously. Katie and her team of linguists had made incredible progress. They could now hold basic conversations with the tigress elders, learning about their culture, their history, their understanding of the world. The tigresses, in turn, were learning human language and concepts. The exchange of knowledge benefited both species. The settlement humans and the Tigress packs worked together in ways that amazed the Galactic Council observers who came to document this unique cooperation. The Tigresses helped humans navigate the jungle safely, teaching them which plants were safe and which areas to avoid. Humans shared their medical knowledge, technology, and food supplies during lean times. Danny walked up beside Jake, carrying a tablet with reports. The Council wants a full update on integration progress. They're talking about making Kareth 7 a model for future joint species colonies. That's good, Jake said, watching the cubs play. This is how it should be everywhere. Different species working together, learning from each other. You know, I was wrong to try to stop you, Danny admitted. Following protocol would have been the safe choice. But you followed your conscience. And it changed everything. The mother tigress made a low, rumbling sound. Katie had taught Jake that this particular sound meant something like family friend. The tigress saw Jake not just as an individual, but as part of her extended pack. I just did what felt right, Jake said. I saw someone who needed help, and I helped. Turns out that's a language everyone understands. As the suns set completely, the bioluminescent plants began to glow, lighting the jungle with soft, colorful light. Humans and tigresses gathered in the central common area, sharing a meal as they did most evenings now. Children from both species played together under watchful eyes. Jake sat down with the mother tigress and her cubs. The gangly adolescent curled up next to him, and one of the tiny cubs climbed into his lap. The mother watched with what Jake had learned to recognize as contentment, her fur glowing soft gold and green. In the sky above, stars began to appear. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was watching this little planet where two species had found each other through the simplest of acts. Feeding the hungry, protecting the vulnerable, and choosing kindness over fear. Jake looked at the cub in his lap, remembering that terrifying day weeks ago when its mother had emerged from the jungle like a force of nature. He had been so afraid, but fear had given way to understanding. And understanding had become something far more valuable. It had become friendship. It had become family. And it had shown the entire galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their capacity to look at someone completely different from themselves and still see a person worth protecting. The cub in his lap made a sleepy chirping sound. Jake stroked its soft fur and smiled. This was the future. Not conquest, not domination, but cooperation. Not fear, but trust. One small act of kindness had started it all. One moment of choosing compassion over protocol. And from that moment, an entire world had changed. Thank you, Jake whispered to the mother tigress, for giving me the chance to know you. The mother responded with a sound Katie had taught him meant, thank you, in their language. But she added a second phrase, one that roughly translated to, the one who sees hearts. That's what they called Jake now among the tigresses. The one who sees hearts. The human who looked at a starving cub and saw not an animal, but a child who needed help. Who looked at a fierce predator and saw not a monster, but a mother protecting her young. As the night deepened and the settlement settled into peaceful quiet, Jake made a silent promise. He would spend his life here, learning from the tigresses, teaching them in return. Building this bridge between species stronger with every passing day. Because in the end, that's what humanity did best. They built bridges, and sometimes, all it took to change the galaxy was one person with the courage to reach across the darkness and offer a helping hand to someone in need.